meeting tonight? Seeing none, we'll move ahead to old business. I have none. Anybody have any old business to bring up? All righty, we'll go right on into the new business, which is the financing of the jail study project. I will call on Mayor Britton. If you don't mind, give us the information you got, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. What I was asked to do for tonight was bring that. Last time I kind of showed you some big picture numbers as far as the cost of a justice center / jail project, or jail / justice center project, however you want to describe it, and then the staffing for it. So just to give you an idea of what kind of cost numbers we're looking at, depending on how large that we build a facility. And those numbers were based on around the 600 bed facility. Tonight, responding to the request, talk about financing, is what does financing look like? Where are we financially? How much money can we borrow? How much will it take a tax increase? Those kind of things. And I'll discuss that tonight. Also, and kind of give you some background too on, we've referred a lot to Mosley Architects, who we contracted with to do the first 2 phases of this project, and to give you a little history on that and tell you where we are there and some thoughts on that. First, like we do every meeting, just want to give you up to date on where we are in the numbers. Captain Laws gave me these numbers this morning. So we were at 400 in the facility, 293 males, 112 females, and 65 state prisoners. So that's where we were this morning. There was also an email that went out to commissioners and to myself from Chief Mize talking about a pay adjustment for jailers. We will have a proposal for you and committees during Personnel Committee on the 10th. So we will address that on the 10th. I won't talk about that tonight, but I'll have a proposal for you on the 10th based on the request of the Sheriff's Department. A term that you'll hear me talk a lot about tonight is debt capacity. And what debt capacity is how much money can we borrow? How much money can we borrow based on the revenue that we have going into our debt service? All right, debt service is the fund, or the pot, I'll say, where we make our loan payments, just like your mortgage. That's where we make our loan payments, is out of our debt service, and then your debt capacity is how much new debt can we add with that based on the revenue stream, and we'll talk about that. So I want you to be aware that that's a word that I'll be using a lot tonight, is debt capacity. Also, the debt numbers that I use are not an endorsement from me. I'm trying to give you big picture information on these are possibilities. These are options. These are some scenarios that you could choose to do, or if you want more research done, we can do that. So just want you to be aware of that. And again, these are concepts. These are big picture thoughts and ideas that I'm presenting tonight. I want to introduce to you, especially the new commissioners, haven't met Chris. Chris, if you'll stand up. This is Chris Bessler. He is with Cumberland Securities out of Knoxville. Cumberland Securities is an investment banking firm. They've been our financial advisor for Hamilton County for many years. And Chris and I work together on the numbers that you'll be seeing today. And if you have any technical questions, some more detailed questions as we go through this, Chris is here to answer those for you if I do not have the answers. Thank you, Chris. Okay, the next slide is this is where we are debt service wise. Oftentimes I communicate better in pictures. when I do in words, and I like to use this slide. It comes out of our debt report that is on our county website, and every year in April we submit to the county commission a debt report to give you a summary of where we are with our debt. And so after this year, 2019, the column on the far left, 2019 is this fiscal year. It's this fiscal year. You'll see the big red column right here, the big red column. That is the big chunk of debt, that principal that we pay this year. We pay it this year and it's paid off. And so you see we don't have red in the other columns. So that's where, the red part is it was when it was first initially issued, it was a $20 million piece of debt, and it'll be paid off. I think the payment's like June 1st, due June the 1st. So that piece of debt will be paid off, which means the following year, 2020, if we do not add any more debt and we do not increase any revenue going into the debt service fund, the red line right here at the top, this red line is our revenue stream. It's around $5.8 million. That's how much revenue is going into the debt service fund. And so our debt payments will be, and it's on the next slide, all this information's on the next slide, it's right around $3.5 million next year, fiscal year 1920. Our debt payments right now will be around $3.5 million. So that leaves us about $2.2 million that we'll be adding to our fund balance, adding to our reserves, or using it to service new debt, depending on what you do. So what this graph shows is just this is where our debt goes into 2026. 2025 is the last piece of debt from our building program that started in 1998, I believe. And so the last piece of debt will be paid off in 2025, and then 2026 is the loan that we took out for improvements at East High School, and that's when it'll be paid off, or 2027, just a little piece. So this is where we are. At the end of this fiscal year, we will have about $17.4 million in debt, in total debt, which is for a county of our size budget is very low. And so it's about $17.4 million. Our fund balance projected for the end of this fiscal year is at around $3 million, right around $3 million. And then
we lost 17.4 million.
Yes. Yes.
And you call it what?
That's the balance of our debt balance. Yeah, that's what we have. And then your revenue, I mentioned. Now this is this year. Revenue is about $5.8 million. That's going into debt service. That's that red line that's on the bar chart. And then our debt payments for next fiscal year around $3.5 million. Any questions?
Glad to see it.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure.
Has it been long?
It's been a long time. Yes. It's just like paying off a house.
Yeah.
Okay, here in calculating your capacity, right, how much money can you borrow? There's some factors that are involved in that. Interest rates, of course. You know, the lower the interest rate, the more money you borrow, because your costs are less. The way you structure your debt. You'll hear terms tonight talk about level debt and wrap debt. And level debt is when you pay the same amount from every year on your debt payments, just like you had a mortgage payment that was the same through the 20 years you had your mortgage. That's level debt. And then wrap debt is when you take your existing debt. Some years, especially at the first, you pay less, and then you load it up later on into the loan. and you kind of wrap it around your current debt. That's what wrap debt is. And so you have the number of bond issues, like in our situation where you're talking schools and jail, you're talking millions of dollars. You wouldn't issue it all at one time. You do multiple bond issues. So, and then how much are you going to issue each time? And then the length of the bond issue. Are you going to go 20 years? Are you going to go 25? Are you going to go 30? So all that, we will work on the details as we get closer to the time that we're going to issue debt to pay for the jail and the school projects. And then you have your revenue trends. Our growth right now in property tax is around 1% a year. Property assessments are growing about 1% a year, and so that's what we've experienced over the last 2 to 3 years. So you'll see some growth in property tax. You may have a bump in delinquent property tax collections one year that you may not have in another. So you kind of average things out. So you look at trends. We also, 2 years ago, last year, the first fiscal year that it was applicable, we raised the fee, the litigation tax that goes for construction of jails. And so that has increased, and you'll see that in the audit. I think the audit will be presented to you next month. So you'll see how that increased last fiscal year. And then you have your target fund balances. So a fund balance is your reserves. That's your reserve. That's your savings account. And that's your fund balance in debt service. In the debt service pot, how much reserve, how much do you have left over at the end of the year? And the target fund balance is roughly 1 year's worth of payments. That's your target fund balance.
1 year worth.
1 year's worth of payments, debt payments. Okay, here's where we are today as far as capacity goes. With no property tax increase, with the tax rate for debt service the way it is today, the way it is this year, we could borrow up to $70 million. And it would be issued over a 4-year period, starting next fiscal year, different amounts, depending on need and what the decisions are on the jail and on the schools and that kind of thing. Joe asked last time, to bring how much would the payment be, how much would it cost us for $10 million? And it's $700,000 roughly is what the payment would be for $10 million. Now, one thing you need to consider as you look at this is, all right, what about your reserve? I'm using reserve and fund balance interchangeably, okay? It's the same thing. Reserve, fund balance, savings, it's the same thing. And so in a 30-year level debt, okay, the payment's the same. Start from day one, the payment's the same through the 30 years. The lowest our fund balance would reach without a tax increase would be less than $1 million, $940,000, which is the lowest that it's been in my 25 years here. So that's a little concerning there. In a wrap debt, the lowest it would be right around $3 million, $2.9 million. So what you do is, again, you structure your debt to try to minimize, the effect on your fund balance. So that's kind of, with no property tax increase, we can borrow up to $70 million. It's a strain on our fund balance. If we do level debt, if we do a wrap debt, we can work it. Now, those are the lowest levels. It doesn't stay there. We'll show you a chart. We get down to the next stage of it. We'll show you a chart which shows the line of what the fund balance would look like. And the lowest part would be after, I think it's 2025, after all 4 issues. We borrowed 4 times, and so we have all $70 million out on the market. And so we're making payments on all $70 million. That's when it hits its lowest. And then it starts climbing back after that. And that's in 2025. Any questions there? Just stop me if you have any questions.
Is this contingent on interest rates? This figure's contingent on the current interest
We
rate?
used, Chris, you correct me if I'm wrong, we used, I think, 4.25, 4.25, 4.5.
Yeah, depending upon which issue it is, it works its way up to about 4.75%, which is about 100 basis points higher than where we are right now.
Right now, the rates are around 3.5, and we used
I understand.
4.5 more.
Yeah.
We were very conservative with it. Okay, any other questions on this? Okay, this is on a 2 cent property tax increase. If we raise property taxes 2 cents, borrowed $70 million over 4 years, you can see the difference in the fund balance. The lowest fund balance on level debt would be $2.5 million. And the larger the fund balance, the reason the fund balance, the reserves are so critical, and it's critical in the debt service and in the general fund, is the rating agencies, Standard & Poor's and Moody's, rate your credit worthiness based on your reserves, on your fund balances, and on your willingness to raise taxes, basically. And we helped ourselves 2 years ago when we raised taxes. When it came to our rating, we are at a AA rating and a AA3 rating, which for this county is very good. It's very good. So we have low debt, which is in our favor. We have a strong tax base, which is in our favor. And we manage well. So with a 2 cent property tax increase, $70 million. Those are your lowest reserves, your lowest fund balance. Next is a 6 cent increase. If you raise taxes 6 cents, you borrow $85 million. It raises your capacity. You can borrow $85 million. Again, issued over 4 years in this situation, and it gets your reserves to a more healthy level. It's still on the level debt. I think our payments on a 30-year debt of $85 million is in the $6 million range. Our payments are, so it doesn't get us to that, to the recommended, which is a full year's worth of payments. But that's the lowest part. That would be the lowest.
So is that 6 cents per year?
No.
Just
Well, it's
one
raised
time.
one time and it stays. Yeah, it stays. Or you could stagger it. If you stagger it, say 2, 2, and 2, your fund balances wouldn't be as strong. Now, let's see what one of the pieces of paper that you have is a note to me from Dr. Perry about the school system building program. I asked him after the last jail study committee meeting, what are your numbers? Give me an idea of how much money you'll need to get started, so that when I talk to the jail study committee, I'll have a better idea on jail and schools, to get us out of the chute what we need. And so this is, I don't think there's anything really much new in here that you haven't heard. But I did talk to him some more this afternoon to get a little more detail, and this is where they are. Their number one priority, of course, is West High School. And of the two, the cafeteria is, or it's priority number one. Priority number 1A is the cafeteria. 1B is the infrastructure, the HVAC, the plumbing, that kind of thing. They have entered into a contract with an architect to prepare the plans for the cafeteria expansion. And they've entered that contract with the hopes of having the construction drawing done by February and go out to bid in March and April and have a contractor ready to go if the funding's there, if you put the funding in place. so that they can start to work when the school's out in May. And they'll have that 3 months to start working on the cafeteria. That's their plan right now. It all depends on funding. They have the funding to go ahead and pay the architect and engineering fees up front, and some testing, and core drilling, and that kind of thing they can pay. And then when the debt is issued, when the funding's in place, then they would replenish those funds with borrowed money, and we would do the same thing with the jail project as well. So they're expecting the cafeteria expansion to cost about $2.6 million. Is what they're expecting that to be in that neighborhood. So that's where they are.
Mayor, do we have any kind of future projection for the next, I don't know, 10 years? If school students are going to have more, less, about the same? I know it's kind of hard to project that, but do we have anything, or?
I don't know.
Oh,
I mean, that's a good question, I think, for Dr. Perry and his team. They do projections, but I don't know if they go out 10 years or not. Any other questions on that? Now, you'll see, I think overall, if you add up these numbers on this note from Dr. Perry, he's hoping to keep West somewhere around 10 billion. A new middle or elementary school around 18. So there's 28 million. Then you have the renovation of either Lincoln Middle or Lincoln Elementary, depending on which way they go there. Now one thing I guess has changed since the last time he was here is they're talking about they could keep Lincoln Elementary where it is and expand it into where the middle school is and build a new middle school. Or they could expand the middle school to where the elementary school is and build a new elementary school. That's their debate right now. They have not come to a conclusion. The school board has not come to a conclusion on that. But that's the only difference in their thought process.
Has he ruled out using the property at Fairview?
I think so.
He doesn't want to do that.
That's the way I understand they've ruled that out. The school board.
What will they do with that property?
That's a good question. I mean,
Not in real estate business.
I don't know.
We have to maintain it.
Right. And then you have the renovation of the schools that do not have the walls in them, and that's the other projects, and they're farther down the line on the priority. So if you take, let's just take 60 million, for example, for a jail justice center, let's just say. And then you add the 28 million for West High and the new elementary or middle school, then that's 88 million. So it's not going to be cheap, and I'm not saying it's going to be that much either. So it depends on the market. Any questions on that?
On the school projects, we would find that all the time. Okay.
No, I think that would be part of the 4 years.
Okay.
And we would issue based on, like the first issue, for the jail project, we would need very little because it's going to take a year to design it. And so most of that would go for the schools. And then would pay for our architect and engineering costs. And then the next year would be more, we'd probably issue 15 to 20 million, and then you would get into bricks and mortar, both schools and the jail.
And as we do the school, I know Commissioner Jarvis has been concerned about them coming under budget. We'll have an understanding that occurs, that the money will come back to us.
And Dr. Perry reiterated that today.
Okay.
And Chris might speak to this, because I quizzed him about this yesterday. One thought that I had about how we could proceed is, what if, and I'm good at putting on the table what-if situations. What if we just funded through the design phase, through bidding? We committed to whatever it costs to get through the bidding process, and then you got on the table, this is what the project's gonna cost. And then we finance it. Instead of, all right, we're gonna finance $15 million for West Tie, it's gonna cost 80, and you've already committed yourself to 15 million and they've got 7. You know, so what if we finance the design work and up through bidding where we've got the low bid in hand, and then we finance it. And we do that for jail and schools. And that's, we can do that. And there's arguments for and against it, but we can do that.
His first is that he's looking for like 10 million, 6.2 million on West High School. What is he gonna do in that cafeteria? What's the deal there?
Expand. It's expanded.
Make it
They're
better.
gonna be expanded.
Kick that wall out, go large cafeteria, take the wall out.
Is that where they can all eat at the same time?
No,
That's not it.
no, they still have to shifts, but
What?
right now,
Yeah.
three lunch periods and it's packed.
It's packed, and one thing too, I think, one of the main reasons, Wayne, about is aligning. Right now, there's a lot of students from East that goes to West for vocational classes. And there's some students from West going to East because that's where the new welding program's going to be, and some other classes. And aligning the two, East has more capacity in their cafeteria than West does, and it's causing a problem, about a 15 to 20 minute difference in the classes. So the students are missing that much in class, and they're going from one school to the other. So it'll help align those classes better.
And you also have the situation where you've got 25-minute lunch periods, and the student that gets down there, you know, at the back end, time they get their chow and sit down, I mean, they're pushed. They're really pushed.
I think most of the new space will be not necessarily in the seating area, but in the serving area. I think I'm right. There'll be some new room in the eating area.
More
Most of
lines.
it's in the.
More lines,
Yeah.
feeding fast. Back to your finances, you, did we not discuss that, or we discussed it, doing like a line of credit, like we're talking about similar,
We can do that.
you know?
We have lots of options.
And then financing once the project.
Right, yeah.
For bond.
Yeah.
You said there were some pluses and minuses. What are some minuses to
To,
that?
what did I say?
I'm sorry.
No, I can't, I just said it, I can't remember.
We pay for the architect and the engineers, and then come back and do the other later. What's not good about that?
A couple of concerns that you might have. One of the ways that many issuers might attend this would be to go ahead and issue the debt, have the funding secured in place, and then go forward with the rest of the project. The risk with that is your contractors see how much you dedicate to borrowing, and maybe they don't sharpen their pencil, you know, tighten their bids up as much. The other option there is to go ahead and authorize maybe a certain amount, but not commit to it. Stepping back just a minute here, when you issue debt in the state of Tennessee, there's 2 resolutions that are required when you're doing it for new money. You have what's called an initial resolution, and this is a resolution that just you publish it in the newspaper and you advertise how much that you are considering to issue. This gives citizens an opportunity to protest this debt issuance. They have 20 days to do so from the date that the initial resolution is published. That does not commit you to anything. It just says you are considering doing so. What would obligate the county's taxing power would be what's called a detailed bond resolution. That would be a resolution that you would come back. You can either do it at the same time as the initial resolution, or you can do it at some later date say, for instance, once you know how much the projects are going to cost. So on that scenario, you could wait, do the initial resolution, we could publish that in the newspaper, you can see how much protest there is on that, if any. And then from there, you can go out and do one detailed bond resolution for a small amount to go ahead and take care of the architectural, engineering, and all the soft costs of the design of both the jail and the schools. That would be a much smaller issue, and then you could wait until that's done and you get bids in, and then we could go back out and do the rest of it at that point without having obligated the county to actually any debt. So that way there's all the incentive for bidders to keep their bids tight and sharp. The downside to it would be that you know where interest rates are right now, and if you're going out in 25, 30-year debt issuances, the risk that you take is that rates rise and it costs you more, right? So you have to balance that. There's not necessarily a right decision here, okay? So just to be clear on that, there's not a right or wrong. Different commissions can rightly do both options, okay? You have to balance the risk that rates increase versus if you issue the debt now, then you're paying on that debt before you actually put it into your project. And so most people generally would try to phase the issuance in closer to how they're going to be spending the actual bond proceeds to fund the project.
Chris, answer, Scotty had a question about a line of credit, so to speak, type of debt. Is there such a thing that we could pursue where we wouldn't be paying interest on them?
We're just paying interest on what we're using,
Yeah.
and then bond it.
It's a bit harder to do that with true fixed rate. If you were to go out and do a variable rate loan with banks, a number of banks can structure it that way, and we've structured a number of those over the years. It's basically just like a construction draw that you would be looking at, except you're using it for soft costs, and if you wanted to do it for the project, you could do that as well. There tends to be a cost that comes with that for banks to be willing to do that. It's not typically a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, but it is real nonetheless. The other thing that you could do is, as Mayor mentioned, is to just fund, go ahead in the next couple of months, do a bond issue in a smaller amount, go ahead and lock the rate in, and take care of all your design and architecture and all the soft cost space, which that would be in the millions still. And then once you have that number, once they come back with that, then we can come back and continue to master plan how you phase all of that in.
Bill, several years ago, we had a briefing, and I don't remember the exact name of the loan where you can like lock those rates in and not borrow money until like 3 years down the road, but start making your payments.
That's the wrap debt.
That's the wrap.
That's the wrap.
Okay.
Yeah, you're paying interest.
Yeah.
You're not paying principal, but you're paying
Correct.
interest.
Okay.
And the law allows us, you can delay principal payments for 3 years.
But you're paying interest on money you're not using.
Pardon me?
You're paying interest on money that you've not used.
Exactly, yeah, that's what you want.
So it's a catch-22. Can you?
Bill, on this school, how many students you talking about renovating the whole cafeteria? How many students
I think West has right around 1,600.
from the east goes to west?
No. I don't know, Wayne. I'm not sure. But not all, but most of the vocational technical classes, what they call CTE classes, are at West now.
Yeah.
But they're developing the welding program at East. They have the cosmetology program at East.
And then west students become the right.
So they're going both ways. And I'm not sure if maybe some of the upper level classes, I don't know, and maybe some of the math, some of the foreign languages, I'm not sure if they're most.
There was at one time.
Mayor Britton, on this 2019, this big debt that's coming down, is it coming down in June of next year?
We make the payments due June 1st.
And would there be enough left over that we could do some developmental parts cash until, why would we have to borrow money to do that initial architectural plans?
You can't, and Chris, you correct me if I'm wrong,
Well,
money in debt service has to be paid on debt. Now, if we shuffled some pennies around in the tax rate and put it in general fund, we could pay cash out of the general fund for it, like we've done with the property that we purchased. But what you have to do is, the money, you have to use, if the money was appropriated for general fund purposes, or for debt service purposes, or for sanitation, you can't move it from one fund to the other. It has to be used for that purpose. Any other questions? So this just gives you an idea of what's our debt capacity, all right, with some idea of some tax increases, what it would do. And again, these are big picture concepts. And this is not this is debt service. This is for bricks and mortar. This isn't for operations. This is for buildings.
Level the ground. Get it in the hole.
Any other questions on this? Okay, on the architect contract, just for you new commissioners, we entered into a contract with Mosley Architects in 2016 after the commission at that time went through a pretty lengthy process of an RFQ process, request for qualifications for professional services like architects and engineers. The law prohibits you from issuing those contracts based on price. It has to be based on qualifications. And so we went through a qualification process, and there were 7 companies who submitted their qualifications. The commission chose Mosley Architects out of Charlotte. In their contract, it's broken down into 3 phases, and we entered into phase 1 and phase 2. And phase 3 is the design phase. That's the next phase we would enter. That's when you really get down to the nitty-gritty as far as what the building is going to look like, what it's going to be made out of, how many cells it's going to have, how many offices, et cetera, et cetera. And then they prepare the construction drawings and they bid it. Now, that's in phase 3. We're not in phase 3. We haven't entered in phase 3. What you have on your desk is the scope of work section of their contract, the part that's highlighted, so that you can see what we entered into on phase 1 and phase 2, and what the scope of work would be for phase 3.
We get down to the design and construction phase. Are we locked in with Mosley?
No.
It could be bidded out again.
If we want to go through that process again. Now, personally, I know there's been some misgivings about Mosley, and I mean, they've been on board for over 2 years. I think they've done an admirable job based on the information we've given them. They've given us options from A through K, and they've done a staffing study, which I used their staffing study and tweaked it to give you the data that I gave you the last meeting. They're paid. We paid them, and the fees are right here. Phase 1 was 117, and phase 2 was 67.5. They're paid, and they keep answering my questions, and we have telephone calls at least monthly, just on different things, especially since we started ramping up our work here. I would recommend that we enter negotiations with them to get into the design phase. And I'm pleased with their work. they have all kinds of experience. And that's, I think, why the previous commission chose them. And the downside to Mosley would be their distance from us. The technology can take care of that.
Your dictate law, it's something that we wanted our own little design to draw up and like a rough draft, but they take it and
Sure. They'll do what we ask them to do. But we've got to get them, I guess what we've got, Jim, what we've got to do is decide where
I agree.
and how big a piece of property. And then, they've given us ideas about how many sales can we get on this size of property. They've given us those ideas. Now it's up to us to come up with, all right, this is exactly how much property we have, and what can you do? Then we say, what can you do with it?
Phil, on this side over here, tearing down the homes, et cetera. What do we know about the property in core samples that we've not done any of that?
No, we haven't done, we've had the asbestos surveys done, we're waiting on the results of those. And then, once we get that back, we submit that to TDEC, and they tell us if there's any remediation we have to do as far as asbestos goes. We don't anticipate there will be. And then we did it to demolish those homes. That's the next step.
Then we still have a step later to do core drilling.
Then we do surveys and the quarter. I mean, we could go ahead and start working on that if that's what you guys want to do.
Well, the question I have for you, the possibility that, one of those designs that we looked at and different things we looked at, and we're all worried about growth or what we may do down the road. What's the feasibility of engineering a jail where we can go up later?
So, I mean, that's been discussed. And before you guys got on the commission, that was discussed, that to build it where you can go up another level.
I think the sooner that we could have those core drills done, the quicker we can come to some type of decision, because wherever we're gonna go, we're gonna have those.
I think we need to know where we're gonna go even before we do the core drilling.
West.
I think our next step actually is getting together and going out and finding us a location. I mean, we can't do none of this until we know where we're gonna go. Whether we're gonna stay at the same place, or we're gonna go somewhere else, or what. We need to decide that.
Well, we've all looked around, there's just not a lot of options out.
Well,
We had a great option.
we have some options written down, but we need to go out there and look at these options, and discuss these options, and come up with the best place, the most viable place that we possibly can find. I think, Bill, is there 4 or 5 different locations we discussed? I know there's several of them.
what other locations we're looking at? What can we look at? We know the old food city over in Montgomery, that's one of them.
I understand, but more than talk about, say, hey, we need to go up here, and look, or we need to pick this place or pick this place. We need to go out there physically, put our foot on the ground and look at it. And what kind of options can we do there? But yeah, you're right. Food City, old, Ward Widener down there. We've got, I guess, Martin Luther King's out, I guess. Place out there.
Widener's on floodplain, that's why the city.
Well, only the first 2 feet of them are. Where that creek is, first 2 feet is the floodplain.
So on up above next to the dealership is not.
Right, that's not it. From my understanding, and I was told that, they get the paperwork on it still, but the first 2 feet for the floodplain.
And we did some work on that with Mosley, 2 years ago, on the Roy Widener, and I worked with them on it. And there's a creek that runs through it. And, there will be some environmental things dealing with that creek and that blue line, and you may have to relocate the creek and,
What about the soil? I mean, I'm concerned about the oil and gas
That would need to be
pollution of
tested.
some of the soil, all that would have to be.
Yeah, that'd have to be, yeah. But that's just one spot, that's what I'm saying, we need to go out there and find it, do whatever.
Well, we need to identify those spots and get our job done.
I agree.
We can go look at where we want to. Have that.
We've been through this process before.
I'd like to make a motion that we go look at some of these sites so we get a better idea of what we're looking at and where we could possibly build a
Mr.
jail.
Evans made a motion that we look at some sites.
I'll second that.
That's fine. Give us a list. Give us a list on a piece of paper.
Any of these?
What we're looking at.
If you want to, say, Ken, you've got 2 or 3 you want us to look at, just send them to me,
I will.
okay? And we'll get those to everybody, and then if you want to go as a group, we'll arrange that. So if you want to go by yourselves.
Now you need to vote, Judge.
A motion. You can go. Is there a second?
Is there any, are we adding to that motion? Or is it just to look at sites?
I really think we need to go as a group, so we can discuss it, you know, goods and bads about it.
Yes.
Any more discussion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
What about the schools, the school project? Do you have any thoughts on going ahead and telling the school system that?
Well, it's something that's gonna have to be done.
Do they know where they're gonna build it at yet?
Well, no, we're talking about the cafeteria. We're talking about the cafeteria.
I think they start.
Cafeteria. We're talking about the cafeteria.
They need to come with a formal request, as soon as possible.
Okay.
They need to start pouring concrete or whatever by the middle of May.
So what I'll do is I'll have them come, in committees in December.
Overall growth of the cafeteria gonna grow?
Yes.
Yeah.
How much, I don't know. They can explain that in May, or in December.
I think that would speed up a little bit when you look at that.
Okay. All right. Any other information you want, or we'll go see the sites, any other information?
What kind of timeframe we gonna have people to start giving out these sites they wanna go look at? We need to set a time. We're dragging more meetings. Chairman, like for better, I'd like to make a motion that we give 1 week from tonight for commissioners to give their proposed sites to the county mayor so he can get a list together so that we can go meet them.
Anything else come before the body?
He just
I
made a motion.
made a motion that we give 1 week from today for the commissioners to give their proposed sites for us to go visit.
Okay.
I
Got a
second.
motion?
I second.
Got a second?
Just to find out about the site, go evaluate it.
Submit
Everything.
your site,
Submit your site.
submit your site to Mayor Britton, and then he'll disseminate it to us, and then we'll group together and go look. And you can take us out to dinner.
I make that motion.
I second that.
We'll go after 8, need to go.
I need a vote. Need a vote on that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye. All opposed? Motion carried.
Any other questions?
Bill, looking at new property, what we're gonna do, versus, pursuing maybe an opportunity over here at a location. What's your projection of how far down the road that's gonna put it?
Depends on where the property is.
Well, we gotta have hearings, we gotta put money into the budget, right? Purchase the land.
We can borrow the money to do that. That would be, when we arrange the financing, we would do the budget amendments and do all that. So we would streamline that process.
Mr. Chairman, we've got a couple of advisory members, maybe more, in the audience. They might want to say something. this time. Do you guys on the advisory want, ladies want to say anything? We don't want to overlook it.
You have the floor if you want to speak. Okay, Bill, is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Regular committees will meet again December the 10th, 5 p.m. in the large courtroom. There's one point of interest I need to bring up to, especially the commissioners. Joe Huntsman had knee surgery this week. He had his second knee replaced. And as far as I know, from the report I had today, he's done fine and recovering well. We would ask that you keep him in your prayers. Anything else need to come before this committee tonight? All right, regular committee meeting. All right, anybody else have anything else? Meeting adjourned.